Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. We have some breaking news just before free agency begins in the NFL. A massive trade. Sorry, Aaron Rodgers, your news about staying in Green Bay is no longer the talk of the town. The Denver Broncos, they went a different route. Everyone assumed Denver taking or trading for Aaron Rodgers. Now, apparently, Denver was working on another quarterback. That being Seattle Seahawks quarterback Russell Wilson, who they have now acquired in a massive blockbuster trade that now sees, and I have the trade up here. Mute my camera off. Here we go. So, after all the off-season talk, all this past year of the media making up this stuff about Aaron Rodgers wanting out of Green Bay, we know what quarterback Denver is going to acquire, and that is now Russell Wilson. So let's look at the trade details. So the Seattle Seahawks, they will get quarterback Drew Lock, who was a part of this deal, tight end Noah Fant, defensive lineman Shelby Harris, 2 first-round picks, which is going to be this year's first and next year's first, I believe, and then 2 second-rounders and a 5th. Denver, meanwhile, will get Russell Wilson and a 4th-round pick. So the AFC West just got even more crazier. I mean, we thought the AFC West, already, Justin Herbert had a great rookie season. He had a great sophomore season last year. We know what Patrick Mahomes can do. Now you add in Russell Wilson to this division, and yes, I know I'll get to Derek Carr in a minute, Raiders fans. Hold on. But somehow Derek Carr is now is the worst, has to be the worst quarterback in the division. I mean, look, Derek Carr is a great quarterback, but man, you gotta look at this division now. Mahomes twice a year. You got Justin Herbert on the rise, and you now add Russell Wilson twice a year. I mean, that division just got even more crazier. I mean, we talk about it is the wild, wild west. Crazy division. Now you're adding some Russell Wilson to the mix. And we knew Denver, they had a talented roster. When you look at Denver's roster, they were really just missing a quarterback. And this is kind of similar to 2012, 10 years ago, when Denver went out and they signed Peyton Manning as a free agent. And essentially, here we are 10 years later, Denver acquiring a veteran quarterback, and it is going to be interesting to see what results are going to be. Is Russell going to lead Denver to another Super Bowl? I hope not, or at least not until my Ravens win another Super Bowl. But it's quite perplexing here, the movement of the quarterbacks. And I had a video planned, trying to predict all 32 starting quarterbacks for the season, for the upcoming season, and I was literally stuck on what Denver was going to do. So now this helps. But what this leads me here to believe is that Seattle is on a full-blown rebuild. And what's so crazy about this is how fast the window closed for the Seahawks. I mean, they went out, they gave up a couple first-round picks for Jamal Adams. They thought they could still compete, contend for the Super Bowls there in the NFC. And now Jamal Adams, who didn't want to be in New York with the Jets because he didn't want to be part of a rebuild, is now a part of a rebuild in Seattle. And essentially, what I'm looking at now is we got to turn our attention to the draft, right? Because Russell Wilson now is in Denver, meaning the Denver Broncos do not own their first round draft pick for the next 2 years, which is weird. I don't know why, but the West teams seem to be allergic to first round picks. The Rams give up their first, 49ers gave up the first. Seattle, you're doing this wrong. You're supposed to get rid of first round picks, not acquire them. Look, point being, let's go back here to the draft. So Seattle right now would have a first round pick. They didn't have a first round pick originally because that was a part of the Jamal Adams trade. And let me pull up my draft order here, my Word document, which now the Seahawks, because of this Russell Wilson trade, will now own the 9th overall pick in this year's draft. And that's going to be interesting because, at that point you have to consider, do they go quarterback? They have to go quarterback, right? They had Geno Smith on the roster. They acquired Drew Lock, a part of this deal. But none of them are going to start. And what makes this so interesting to me is that Pete Carroll is still the head coach in Seattle. Because when Pete Carroll was not let go, there was some speculation that Pete Carroll might be let go out of Seattle and the Seahawks might move on. I thought maybe that's when Seattle would look at maybe trading Russell Wilson, would be a rebuild. To go on a full-on rebuild, new head coach, new quarterback. But here it seems as if they're keeping Pete Carroll while getting rid of Russell Wilson first. But that to me tells me they have to have an eye on a quarterback, right? Malik Willis, maybe Kenny Pickett. They have to have an eye on a quarterback in this draft in order to have been comfortable enough to make this deal. And whether or not whoever Seattle gets, it's going to be it's going to be a rebuild. And Seattle has a lot of picks. They have players now from this trade. So I think ultimately here, Seattle, obviously, we can't say, well, who won the trade yet, because it all really depends on how you use the picks and how the team that acquires the draft picks uses the picks and how successful those picks become. But obviously right now you have to say Denver, obviously with the roster they have, Denver obviously is winning this trade. But even with Russell Wilson, can they overcome the Chiefs and the Chargers and the Raiders in the AFC West? And that to me is going to make things so interesting this season. Denver plays Seattle in Seattle, so we'll see Russell Wilson actually returning to Seattle as a part of the Denver Broncos later this year. Whenever the NFL releases the schedule, which is usually around April or May, I am pretty sure that it's going to be a Sunday night or a Monday night game. No doubt. No doubt. But again, let's go back to the draft, because Seattle here, obviously they're going to need a quarterback. Malik Willis, talked about Kenny Pickett. And to me, they have to have been doing their homework on these quarterbacks probably since last year. Because, as I said, if they are going to be this comfortable enough to trade Russell Wilson away in a supposed draft class of quarterbacks that aren't as good as last year, I mean, you can say what you want about the haul of picks and players they're going to get. But when the general consensus of this draft when it comes to the quarterbacks is the quarterbacks aren't as good as last year. I mean, you look back at even 2020, Joe Burrow, Tua, Justin Herbert. I mean, we've been spoiled these last couple of years with quarterbacks and with coming out in the draft. I mean, 2018 was Josh Allen, Baker, Lamar Jackson. 2017 was Mahomes, Watson. So we've been spoiled these last couple years with good quarterback draft classes, and a lot of people were down on this year's in 2022. To me, for people to say that this year's class is not as good, and then for Seattle to pull this trade off, that tells me they like somebody, and they feel like there's someone that can buck that curve or trend. That this is not a good draft class. But hey, just remember, Seahawks did get Russell Wilson in the third round in 2012. So we'll see. But that is the big news coming out of today, March 8th. Today is the franchise tag deadline. Davante Adams is apparently going to getting the franchise tag. Yeah, franchise tag. A host of others are getting tagged before free agency begins next week. So stay tuned here on this channel. We're going to cover a lot of things here in the NFL, free agency, the draft, all coming up in the off season. But yeah, we just kicked things off with big news today. Russell Wilson is now a Denver Bronco. Aaron Rodgers is a Packer for life. What other quarterback moves are going to be made this offseason? We'll find out next week or in the coming days. But man, the AFC West is going to be a fun division to watch this year. Seattle plays Denver in Seattle. Russell Wilson gets a homecoming. Who's going to win the AFC West? Who knows? But I just know it's going to be a fun division to watch. I've been your host, Money Mike. Stay tuned. Subscribe to this channel for more breaking NFL news throughout the off season, as we are now just getting started with the news as that quarterback carousel begins to spin. Where will it stop, and who will be starting at quarterback for some of these teams that still need a quarterback in 2022?